Well, welcome to this special edition of Wealth Coherence. I'm Emily Bouchard, your host, and we are focusing on purposeful prenups. And today's guest is a dear friend and longtime colleague and my co-author of the book Estate Planning for the Blended Family, Paul Hood. Yeah, it's interesting because when we started talking about purposeful prenups a while ago, and I remember one of
More
my
than a
clients.
decade ago.
Yeah, we presented on it, and I was on a plane with a gentleman who was sitting next to me, and he asked me what I did, and I told him, I help families talk about money, and especially when there's wealth involved, so that they can have a really healthy relationship with it that's based on purpose and values. And he looked at me and he said, "Do you do prenups?" And I say, "Yeah, of course. It's all part of
I wrote a book
yeah."
about it.
And he said, "Well, my daughter's getting married. I told her she's never gonna don't expect a dime. That's not how anything's set up. But in reality, she's worth $400 million." And I
Oh,
looked at him and
thanks for a surprise, Dad.
I just said, "You have a much bigger issue than the prenup because, you know, you have set up a certain understanding that's not accurate, and it's going to impact trust within the family, like you're saying. And it's like when there's this telling you but not telling you, it's like, I don't trust you. There's so many things around that, and prenups are all about experiences trust as well, right? Do you trust me? Why don't you trust me? And so we ended up doing a really intensive family disclosure, family meeting around understanding the wealth and the responsibilities related to it. And then from that place, then stepping into the prenup conversation and including the betrothed gentleman, and having him understand the purpose of it. Yeah.
But to me, it because it's a legal agreement that the parties have to sign. They cannot be represented by the same lawyer. It's
Mm-hmm.
unethical. Okay,
Yep.
since they have to agree, why not have a conversation and try to use it as a way to learn about money differences between the two? All the stuff
Mhm.
that you've written extensively about and spoken
Yeah.
extensively about.
Yeah, I
I mean,
think
this is an opportunity to help their relationship. This could be one of the most holistic practice areas there could ever be.
it's so interesting because you actually have a great story from your history in terms of what it's like as an attorney to try and be collaborative. I love that since that time, collaborative law has really come into play. And we've spoken to some people as part of this around what does it mean to work in a mediation fashion and a collaborative fashion. But typically, attorneys are trained to be protective of their client. And when they treat the individual as their client and not the couple, which is what they're legally required to do, it sets up an adversarial relationship. And shared with me before a story with somebody that you were trying to talk about, like, well, let's talk about what does she want? Like to actually,
Yeah, like
yeah,
it's some of it is common sense, Emily, and I thank the good Lord every day for having been born, outside the city limits, in the country where your word was your bond, and you
Mhm.
did what you said. Um, but communication is the key to all of this.
Mhm.
And when people first get in, as well as I do that when their money, well, money in general is a taboo. So, I mean, Jerry Levan called it a taboo subject 30 years ago, 40 years ago. But when we have differences about money, we know it's the number one cause of
Yeah.
divorce. Okay?
Yeah.
We know the societal cost of divorce. It is staggering. Whatever we can do to reduce that societal cost, we should be all in on. If we can push the divorce rate down, now it's declining on its own, but it's more a
Mhm.
matter of of actuarial science and anything else. But if we can push that down, and one of the best ways to do it is have a solid ground when it starts. And a great organized way to do it is to go through a purposeful prenup process. It was inevitable.
I'm curious about particular areas that you've seen tend to be the biggest areas of either contention or where couples really do need additional support when somebody's coming to the relationship with a lot more resources than the other person.
Well,
financially.
Well, obviously, we've talked about the disclosure aspect of it. You do run into the unmoneyed spouse or to be sometimes playing excessive hardball, and it's emotional hardball. If you loved me, you wouldn't require me to sign this.
Oh, it's like,
and it can be a real burden. I had that happen with one of the guys, and I was pretty sure that she was a bad apple.
Oh.
They got married. It lasted a year.
Oh no.
The prenup upheld, and I think last I heard she was on number 6.
Wow.
So, it's been a long time, but eat, drink, and remarry is alive in New Orleans anyway. So.
Yeah, I think, there's couples really need support around how to have the conversation, and that's a big part of what the purposeful part of it is. Like, how do you bring your values to it? How do you frame it in such a way that somebody doesn't get offended or think, why don't you trust me, or why are you forcing me to do this, and don't you love me? And it's much more about, like what you were saying, where it's about empowerment and being able to have conversations about what does this future look like. And
let me add this. Sometimes lawyers try to sabotage it with clients who want it. It's like, well, don't you want me to really look out for all of your best interests, to represent you as a zealous advocate? And some of the clients felt a little guilty about that. And I told one of them, I said, let me tell you something. I said, that is a cop-out. I said, if they're really going to look after his or her best interest, they would try to help them do what they want to do, and they're willing to sign a marriage license and get married, which has legal ramifications, not to mention emotional and psychological ramifications.
It's the most important contract you're ever going to sign and be
exactly.
part of. Yeah.
Exactly. It's more important than your mortgage and note.
I think that the biggest thing that I see, and I love how you've taken your career in such an education-focused direction, empowerment, is that couples can really empower themselves in this process, and they can take the reins with it, and they can educate their attorneys on how they want to be treated, how they want it to go.